something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast. We just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast.
All right, well, let's come on to another NASA image from the moon mission, which is supposedly a family photograph on the surface of the Earth, and we have featured this one before.
On the surface of the moon. You said you want to say that again, yeah.
Well, it probably is the surface of the Earth.
Freudian slip.
Yeah, yeah. We showed the famous clip of Andrew Johnson putting his family photograph into the oven along with his dinner.
So here we have a family photograph, and
I just got to say here and now that I really hate this experiment he does, because he's putting a photograph in an oven, right, which is at earth temperature pressure, earth temperature moisture. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the conditions of the photograph that Charlie Duke or whoever it was put on the moon. There's no similarity at all. What makes the photograph curl up is temperature on the front of it. On the moon there wouldn't be any temperature on the front. I mean, we don't even know what angle the sun was at.
I think the curing solutions as well on the photograph, once they're heated, because they're almost elastic, the elasticity increases, so it will pull the paper, it will curl the paper.
But would it do that in a vacuum? Or is it a reaction with oxygen? Or
it must have an oxygen reaction element to it.
Okay, well, in that case, this is a totally pointless experiment. I really hate this experiment because it's got no.
Yeah, I mean,
this experiment to me is as stupid as the bloody drop test. That's how stupid this experiment is. It's got nothing.
Yeah, I don't think it's relevant, but I think the point he's trying to make, obviously, he's trying to make the point that yes, NASA are known for doctoring photos and so forth. So fine, why would they stop doing it now? That's a fair enough point. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. I don't think you should do an experiment.
It's crap. If you can't do an experiment that's in the same situation, don't bother, really.
Over here we have an oven, and this oven is set to 100 degrees centigrade, and I'm now going to put this photograph in the oven, which is cooking some of my dinner, and then I'm going to watch it through the glass. And that you can see that in very short order trying to get better light, but you'll see it when I open it. This is curling up within seconds. So I think that's a pretty convincing demonstration.
He's put it in the oven with his dinner. So whatever chemical reaction is happening there is going straight onto his food. I don't know what he's got. I think he's got jacket potatoes. So that is skin that he's going to eat.
Yes.
You know, there's no protection from whatever's happening in an enclosed space with that photograph.
It's a poor attempt to make a point, I think, and yeah, you're right. You would not want all the toxins that are used to actually.
So it's full of vapor.
It's full of vapor.
It's basically boiling.
Yeah, he's got food under there as well, which is a lot of moisture be coming from.
You know, I mean, it's just it's just such a stupid experiment.
It's
I
not
don't know
relevant
what
at all,
to say
so,
about it. It's just beyond words.
Yeah.
And here it is. You can see it there curled up, and that's only at 100 degrees centigrade. Yeah. That's right, and I'd like to assure viewers I wasn't on the moon when I did that. Yeah.
So just explain why you put your family photograph in the oven with your dinner.
Yeah, well, this was again one that caught my eye because it's a photograph from NASA on the moon, which you can look at based on the physical properties of materials rather than lighting effects. So the claim is that the photograph is on the surface of the moon. If you look up the official sort of temperature of the surface of the moon, the average temperature is 100 degrees centigrade. In sunlight, it's probably going to be 170, 180 degrees centigrade, something like that.
So it's as I said in the last show, it's higher than boiling water on the surface of the moon.
absolutely. So if you have a piece of photographic paper, an ordinary photographic paper, it does what's called convolution. It convolves, it curls up. So that photograph should be curling up, what we're looking at there, but it's perfectly flat. It's in a plastic bag, which doesn't appear to have been, if you heat a plastic bag with a hairdryer, you'll see it all starts to scrunch up or at least change shape. We're not seeing any of that with that photograph. That is not on the surface of the moon. End of.
All right, and then we've got another image here of a lunar rover, and there's all kinds of problems with the lunar rovers, which we covered in a previous show. The fact that they don't even fit into the lunar module, there's no tracks showing there, various other problems with the technology. For example, the operating temperature range of the batteries is completely out.
Right.
So there's a lot of problems with the lunar rovers.
That's right. Again, that's worthy of a little bit of study for people to look at the problems in those areas. Yeah, definitely.
And that's just a few of the faked NASA moon images. Let's now look at some of these testing sites on Earth. Let's use the terminology that they use at NASA. They call them a Mars analog site. Now I'm just going to read out what a Mars analog site is. It is a location on Earth where some environmental conditions, geologic features, biological attributes, or combinations thereof may approximate in some specific way those thought to be encountered on Mars, either at present or earlier in the planet's history. Studying such sites leads.
Are they using a Tamiya like lunchbox model there to simulate something? I mean,
It's not even clear. It hasn't even got the ground clearance to move. What is that thing?
what similarities would you find there?
It's written UCF on the side of it.
Yeah, they must be obviously not testing anything to do with movement there. They must be testing sensors.
It's got more
They've
logos.
got pitot tubes on there and things, so...
More logos than common sense on that thing, that's for sure.
It's got more logos than some F1 cars. But anyway, yeah.
But I think one of the other interesting things about that picture to me is that, it's got sponsorship in the background, the Discovery Channel. I mean, what exactly is that?
To be...
It almost looks like it's done for a TV show.
Well, that's the thing. I mean...
I don't... See, there's not enough information about what that picture is for me to even involve it. I don't think that tells us... Is that anything to do with NASA at all?
But this is one of many sites, and like he says, some of the attributes of that specific area, they theorise to be similar to Mars.
And is that one of them?
And that must be one of them.
Well,
I mean,
there's no evidence whatsoever that NASA are even there that I can see.
Yeah, well...
None of those are a NASA badge that I can make out. What's that red, green and blue thing?
Yeah, that's the colour band, isn't it? To test
Oh, what, you mean
cameras,
to make sure that they're not faking the colour of the Earth?
Yeah. This is actually filmed on Mars.
So they won't be able to use that in 15 years' time when Elon lands. Is that what you're saying?
God knows what they're going to do when Elon lands. Yeah.
They'll have to pretend that's a Tesla.
Yeah.
To new insights into the nature and evolution of Mars, the Earth, and life. So what they're saying is they're looking for places on the Earth which are a bit like what Mars might look like.
Yes, and have similar conditions, with the rocky terrain or, cold temperatures, or very dry, and this sort of thing.
Now, one of these sites is a place called Devon Island, which just so happens to be the largest unpopulated island on Earth. So they're choosing extremely remote places. I'm sure they could find somewhere just as with the same weather conditions, which is a lot easier to access.
Nobody has ever lived on Devon Island.
There's no flights to Devon Island.
No, there's no...
What about ships?
Well, you could sail there, I suppose.
Would you need your own...
They've had to make their own tiny landing strip, but to get supplies in and out.
In the document, I suggest in the hypothesis why they're choosing these remote sites, and that's so that no one can actually come and photograph the landscapes that they're using for the faked Mars rover images.
Right. Because these aren't...
There is a problem with this to me, though. There's a hell of a lot of moisture in these islands.
Yes.
to me,
they must be very selective of the season that they choose to take their images from. And you've got to remember, the images will not be in sync with any time. It could be an image that was taken 2 years ago, and then obviously it goes through the special NASA filter of whatever they do, of doctoring it.
but surely one of the things that you wouldn't have to test Perseverance rover for would be being waterproof. That'd be one of the tests you'd never have to do. So how would they know?
If you're going to guard it against all sorts of atmospheric conditions, it's going to have to be waterproof.
Do you think that they would
Anyway.
literally have like a tent or something to put over it every time it started to rain, like a cricket pitch?
They probably would, depending on what they're testing. I mean, I don't know if if they've got the full actual rover with all its trimmings on there.
But where that place is, you must get like a blizzard that would completely cover that whole village. That whole...
You could possibly get a polar bear just come up and just swipe the camera off. You can get all sorts of different things, couldn't you?
But what I mean is that's not an all year round base. It couldn't be.
It can't be, not in the harshest times of winter.
It's got to be literally like end
Seasonal.
June till end of August or whatever.
Yeah, you're looking,
and then you're
2 to
finished.
3 months max.
And then you'd have to pack all that up, get it into a plane, and get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise.
Well, a lot of those structures look temporary anyway. There's only one permanent structure.
Well, I mean, even in somewhere like Scotland, you can get 6 feet of snow. I mean, what would you get on Devon Island? You get 20 feet.
More ice as well.
And so, whatever that operation is, it would have to be extremely temporary, extremely mobile. And it just makes you wonder why the hell you wouldn't test it in Arizona.
Who says they don't?
But what I mean is, they're pointing out that they're testing it somewhere that's never been inhabited. In other words, no one's ever going to recognise, hey, wait a minute, that's the rock behind Auntie Dora's house.
Yeah, but also no one really has the opportunity to get on a boat or a plane, get over there, and walk it and photograph it. And I don't see why no one has done that. I don't think, if you are a Canadian citizen, I'm sure you're allowed to take your schooner out there and go and have a walk. I don't know.
Well, the problem's the ice.
Obviously, it's seasonal, so you'd have to do it in a small window of time.
Even in the middle of in summertime, you could still hit a massive iceberg.
True, that's another danger. Of course.
And then you're dead. There's no one's going to get to you.
No.
I mean,
once you're in the water there, you have 5 minutes at
3
least.
minutes, max. I mean, you'd be finished. So, I mean, you've got to have a landing strip, really.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, could you sail
And
there?
I'm sure they would do it right inland as well. So not only have you got to get to the island in one piece, once you're there, you need to traverse the island.
I mean, even looking at that picture, to me, it looks like there's 2 rivers. I mean, was that just the
There
colour of the
is
sand?
erosion there. You can see there's water erosion
Is that
there.
a river?
Well,
This bit here, is that a river?
Well, it's got to be something natural. It doesn't look like it's man-made. It's not in a straight line, so there must be some sort of moisture going on there.
What's
like
this
a glacier
down here?
sort
Is
of
that a
thing.
river? It just looks like it's
Pathways
been
of some
hit
sort.
by a deluge of rain. In which case, to me, I would have thought you wouldn't really want to take the Martian rover there because surely they haven't tested it.
Obviously, that's their base camp. They would move a mile or two away from there to move the rover. You got to remember that they'll tow it somewhere and then they'll let it loose. It's not going to be anywhere near there particularly. But anyway, I don't know.
Look at that. There's a tent there. Now, that could be where they keep the rover.
Maybe.
Well, you know what I mean, though. There's no. I mean,
Like a doghouse and just open it up and let it.
Well,
let
just
loose.
so it doesn't get wet at night.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Just keep it cozy.
it doesn't get wet because it's not next to anything. Why would you have that tent over there like that? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's just there's the bit where they live in over there.
Well,
There's
it's a
the
lot of temporary. There's
communications.
a lot of temporary structures.
There's like
there
the
that
food
aren't
storage and
there
stuff.
all year.
And then there's one that seems to have like a little trail.
But you got to remember.
But if you look at it, it's got like a little trail.
I'm
like
sure
a sort of rover-sized
Yeah.
trail going up there.
But I'm sure they test more than just the rovers there. You test all sorts of equipment, suits and sensors and all sorts of different things. Obviously habitat stuff. So it's a main base. But anyway,
Okay, well, moving on.
Places where you're going to go out for a Sunday afternoon
No.
trip, or even on a an expedition, with kayaks or whatever, you wouldn't go to these sorts of places.
Even if you had your own helicopter, you'd be hard pushed to get to some of these places. One of them is, the one on Devon Island is next to the Horton crater, which is a huge ancient crater.
When I first looked at Devon Island on my laptop screen, with Devon Island filling my laptop screen, Horton crater was a great big red spot, about 6 millimeters across, I'd have said. Right in the middle of the screen, absolutely unmissable. And yet when I went back a week later to look closer, they'd changed the pictures, so you now can't see Horton crater. If you have the whole of Devon Island on your computer screen, the crater is now completely invisible. I think they swapped a high altitude summer photograph for a winter photograph when there's a slight covering of snow, so all the red soil and rock thrown up by the impact is no longer visible on Google Earth.
That's also very interesting because it alleged that the Mars rovers, or at least one of them, is in the Gusev crater on Mars.
On Mars.
The Opportunity rover, yes, is supposed to be exploring the edge of a 23-kilometre crater on Mars.
Right.
That's a coincidence, isn't it?
So when I read that into a document, I didn't realise that there was an impact crater on Devon Island, or near where this test station was.
Now, obviously, if you're faking the Mars photographs, you need somewhere extremely dry with no vegetation. And practically the first meteorite crater I looked at was this 23-kilometre crater up.
Okay, so maybe that's a point then. Maybe it's much drier on Devon Island than I would imagine. Because if you can see that huge crater from Google Earth, that means it's got no ice on it at all.
Yeah, obviously we are only limited to what Google allows us to see, because there are so many blank spots on that. If you yourself try and go onto the Google Earth now, have a look around Devon Island, you will notice that there are those blank spots. I think we might have mentioned it in an earlier show.
Yeah, but is it possible that the cold? I mean, because one of the things about the Arctic, obviously, is that it's actually frozen ocean, whereas the Antarctic is actually the world's largest desert by definition.
Yeah.
But it's still obviously ice covered because
it's glaciers and it's freshwater ice.
Exactly, it's
different.
2 kilometers.
Yeah.
But is it possible that surely you'd get snow and ice all over Devon Island? I mean, maybe it was the summer shot.
I cannot believe that you wouldn't get the whole island covered in snow. Not at that location on the planet. I mean, my mother used to live in Edmonton in Canada, and winter there is serious. You're looking at minus 30, 35 plus at its peak. And the snow blizzards are serious out there. So it's around that sort of region, and I can tell you, there is no way that you wouldn't be covered in ice.
But the thing about that is, of course, there's vegetation and stuff there, whereas this is completely barren. It's just literally a rock. So the only place the vapor could come from would be blown off the sea. But I still think you're right. I think the wind would get strong enough and blow basically snow onto the island, and it would get covered in.
A snowstorm is huge. When you have a snowstorm, and if you had one that happened to go over Devon Island, it would deluge that place with snow.
So they'd have to move that base out every winter.
It has to be seasonal. There's no way you could have a permanent standing there. But like I said, they test different things at different times. The temperature variations between summer and winter are quite large. It's very seasonal over there. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the other thing about the Curiosity rover is that it is basically radioactive.
Yes, Curiosity is, yeah.
So you'd have to have it somewhere completely uninhabited.
Well, you're saying that, but if you're going to fake it, why would you have a radioactive thing to fake? You would just have a normal electric battery-operated rover, because people are only having snapshot views of it. You're never going to really use for faking it. You wouldn't use a real nuclear
I said that
reactor.
the other week, but surely they'd have all kinds of stuff on Earth that gets reports back from the radioactive half-life and everything. And you'd have to fake all of that, or you'd have to really do it.
yeah, if we're going down the fake road, then you're going at great lengths. Okay, you know, if you're being monitored, how the signals from Mars are coming back to Earth, then you're starting to really get into
what
real
you mean
fakery
is that this thing would have a huge control panel, just like Apollo would. I mean, okay, you're only getting everything's coming back 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes late, but you'd still have daily reports on what the half-life of the palladium or whatever, plutonium I think it is, in Curiosity rover was at. You'd still know the voltage. You'd have to know all that stuff all the time.
You could have a small reactor running in a room somewhere that just sends you signals. It could be easily faked. The location of it could be easily faked. You could say it somewhere, but then you're sending the results somewhere else.
You could just fake it with a computer model.
Yeah, a computer model will do that.
Yeah. Okay.
On Devon Island in the Canadian Arctic. So I just googled. It's called Horton Crater, and the third link that came up was NASA testing Mars rovers there. Now they would say, oh well, we have to go to the most Mars-like locations to test our rovers, but I'm not convinced. They'd be better off testing them in the Mojave Desert, right next to where the NASA headquarters are.
Mm-hmm. So of course they would argue that they chose that site specifically because they knew they were going to send it to a cratered area on Mars. Right. That's why they chose that particular site. But
an extremely remote island which they've now surrounded with high-tech listening devices to keep away any unexpected visitors. They've been running, they're called the AMAZE expeditions, AMASE, Arctic Mars Analog Svalbard expeditions, that have been running for about 10 years, I think. And they have been to a few different locations on Svalbard or Spitsbergen. But they usually seem to head towards a place called Bokfjorden, and also Woodfjorden, which are also in what they call this Arctic desert region. It doesn't actually get very much snow at all. It's Woodfjorden in particular looks almost completely dry, certainly on Google Earth.
We've got other sites, one in Utah, which if you look at these photographs of the Mars analogues as they call them, it does look very much like the photographs that they've been sending back, both on Devon Island and...
That is definitely the most Martian looking one we've seen yet.
And yeah, like you've mentioned before, why not just do it in the US? They must have sites, obviously, that look exactly like Mars in the US. There's many, red, sandy dunes and deserts in the US. Look at Grand Canyon, for instance.
It's going to be tempting to add a little bit of red to that later. It really is. I mean, that is fascinating because I'm sure there was one picture. They don't seem to talk about it in this show, but I'm sure there was one picture from one of the rovers where you saw something that looked like that building thing on the left, this thing here, sticking over the top of a ravine.
I mean, I can't say that I think there's any similarities to any photos I've seen of Mars and this, because obviously the layering of all the sediments and different types of rock there. But I think we should put a red filter on it and see what happens.
And in the Utah one, and if you go on to because we're going to come on to the Mars Society in a moment.
Oh yeah.
And these Mars analog sites, what they do is they get sort of a cylindrical tin can type building, and they'll install it in the middle of the desert in Utah or up in Devon Island, and it has a few stories in it, and scientists will live there for months on end because it simulates a landed spacecraft that they're living in, right? And scientists actually compete to have a go in it, right? To live in it for sort of months at a time, and they get these awards for so apparently it's very, very prestigious for someone studying universities to get their PhD who live in this tin can for 6 months in the middle of nowhere, and they actually get awards for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Whatever floats your boat, I suppose.
It takes all sorts to make a world, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
So tell us, where do you think Curiosity rover actually is in reality?
The Curiosity rover has definitely passed several walrus graveyards, in my opinion, which means it's most likely on Svalbard, or it could also be on Bear Island, which is between Svalbard and Norway, which also has walrus graveyards and is relatively flat.
What about the lemming image though? Is that, because that's...
Well, they're using CGI to join together various locations. Like I was saying, they can have they have to have one location in the foreground that they can use their robotic arm to microscopically examine, but they can have a completely different part of the world, or even just CGI in the background. Some of the hills look distinctly unreal. The Spirit rover seems to have been done almost entirely on Devon Island, I'd say.
Right.
The
Curiosity, you think is more likely to be Svalbard? Is that what you're saying?
The Curiosity rover, I think they've used bits of Svalbard and a lot of the Atacama Desert.
Right. So let's assume that the hypothesis is correct. I would imagine the best way to expose this conspiracy is for somebody to find where these landscapes have been filmed and photograph them and compare them, so we can be absolutely sure and absolutely categoric of which landscapes they've used. Would you go along with that, Douglas?
Yeah, absolutely. But what I found out fairly quickly was that, of course, they've been very, very careful to use locations that can't quite be identified. So even if there are any identifiable hills in the background, they'll use CGI to put something really indistinct in the background. In fact, that's the kind of the distinctive feature I've noticed of all the photographs, is the lack of distinctive features in the background.
Right, but perhaps, as we've seen with the fossils, the lemming, the vertebrae, sometimes they do slip through the net. So maybe we can set a challenge, the Richplanet Find Mars on Earth challenge, to any budding explorers out there who might happen to have their own seafaring vessel or helicopter or light aircraft, who maybe want to try and find where some of these sites are and provide documented evidence